doing a series of paintings that reflect a recent trip to Italy, and in this case, Tuscany. We visited the hilltop town of San Gimignano as a part of our tour this past fall, and woke up early to meet our driver, Gianni, who took us up some back roads, as he's familiar with this country, to look at San Gimignano, the city, in front of us, above us, and to look at the valley below San Gimignano. And here's where we decided to paint for the day. The subject I'm going to be talking about, I guess the technical subject, is brushwork. And I've kind of given up, at least temporarily, on using the pencil. I'm finding the brush to be much more facile and direct, and I appreciate the qualities that it brings to the evolution of the painting and the finish of the painting, and some of the things that it does not promote. I found when I was using the pencil, I tended to fill in more than I wanted to, and I'm sure that this can be circumvented, but I found the brush, starting with the brush, in many cases kind of liberates me from that. So what you see now is me laying out the painting in terms of some of the lines that define the landscape, some of the shapes that are created, bulky shapes of trees or fields. And also you see the whites that I'm leaving. These are intentional, and why they're not really refined at this stage, they're important enough that I leave them and reshape them or refine them to fit into the finished work. And so you can see I'm laying at this painting out with some broad brush strokes, and now I'm refining them. Some things that I think about in terms of brushwork and that I teach to are what makes up a good brush, first of all. Some of the things that I think make up a good watercolor brush is its ability to carry a lot of water to the page, a lot of pigment if necessary, to hold a fine tip for doing detail work if necessary. And also the paper is important for good brushwork, because the paper, the tooth of the paper, the absorbency of the paper aids you in creating brushwork and also in finding unique and different ways to use marks on the paper. I use almost exclusively the Arches 140 cold press, the rough paper, as I'm really enjoying the texture. You see that dry mark that I made just now? The texture of the paper really helps to create a broken edge, which I'm enjoying in painting at this moment. I've tried the hot press and found it to be disappointing because it didn't allow for the same sorts of variations in brushwork, and the absorbency is much different. Anyway, you grow accustomed to what you use, so I recommend to even the beginning painter who's just making their first paintings to use professional grade paper, because it just makes the whole experience easier, more enjoyable, whereas the student grade papers tend to make it a more labored process and a frustrating process. So I know they try to sell that in the art stores. You're a student, you need to buy student grade materials, but this is one case I would make an exception: buy professional grade paper. So look at the variety of brush marks that I'm getting with these two quill brushes. I'm using what are called a quill or a mop, and I use cheaper ones. Occasionally I have some very good ones, and I made a list of the brushes that I use that you can find on my website. If you download the tutorial at the bottom, at the end of the tutorial, you'll see the brushes that I use. Anyway, I use a few brushes. I don't use a great variety, but I use the brush in a variety of ways. The brush has three main parts: the body, which is the length of the brush, the tip, which of course is the tip, and the heel of the brush. And I use all three of those equally through any one painting, depending on what sort of stroke I want. And I practice that apart from doing a painting. I'll practice just making marks to seek out new varieties and new ways of using the brush. I find the brush to be simply the best tool that's ever been created. I find it's almost a direct extension of what's going on inside of me, not necessarily emotionally, but certainly in terms of intent and, let's say, passion. And I hope that translates in these tutorials that I'm presenting, because it is an important aspect of painting and very definitely an aspect of the work that I try to do, the feelings that I try to communicate. These brush strokes I'm making now, you can see they're defining the rows of the field, but they're impartial. They're only partial marks. They're broken. They're not complete end to end, and this allows, in some case, for us to move through the painting a little more easily and actually take the painting more as an expression rather than a representation. I don't know if that makes complete sense to you, but it's definitely a quality that painting carries, is the ability to express the feelings and sensations that the artist wants his audience to feel. Anyway, you can see the painting is starting to acquire a finished feel to it, and brush marks have been many and varied, but yet they're all kind of connecting. Part of this is a result of that first pass into the painting, which created the foundation of the rolling hills, and you could start to see the patchwork of fields in those brush strokes. And darker colors have been added to create the trees that line these fields, and also to give us a feeling of depth. You see the greens that I'm using, darker, richer greens. By richer, I mean a little more yellow, a little more brightness, a little thicker paint toward the front of the painting. And as they recede to the midground and finally the background, they're getting grayer, bluer, paler, in some cases softer edges. But a lot of the painting was accomplished in actuality in the first few strokes. That set the feeling, the tempo, the lay of the land, if you will, and I've refined those strokes and certainly added a lot in between now and then, but that first foundation of maybe a dozen strokes created the foundation for this painting. Now what you see me doing is adding some important details. The white shape that was very evident in the beginning has become squared off and made to resemble the villas or the farmhouses that sit atop these hills and just below San Gimignano. It's we spent the whole morning on the wall. We never entered the city because we were so taken with the view of the valley, and it kept transitioning. There were clouds rolling over, and we'd get spots of sunlight, as you see now, followed by cloudy, soft representations. And so we spent the morning doing watercolors on the wall of San Gimignano. And we could hear the tourists above us. They were able to see us, but not really able to come down to where we were, and they were watching us paint and occasionally sent us a cheer or a congratulations, or look at how beautiful this valley is to the artist's eyes. And it encouraged us. First we felt self-conscious, as you do in any public place, but after you settle into your subject, that disappears, and you start to get into the painting. And hearing the tourists that were above us, and there were many. San Gimignano is a very busy place. Hearing them give us a little encouragement was really fantastic. And in many different languages. So you see these small brush strokes. I've switched to a smaller brush. It's still a mop, believe it or not. It's just a small mop. And I'm adding little details to the edges, to the windows, to refine those buildings, to refine some of the important shadows. But as you notice, I'm working a lot in this small area, which has become, or was intended, I can say with all honesty, this was my center of interest. And while I started with a very broad, sweeping view, I'm spending a lot of time to refine this central area and trying to balance it based on this center of interest where I have the few villas growing and appearing in bright sunlight against the backdrop of the valley. And you see other villas in the background. Even in the far distance, you can see some small flicks of white. Those indeed are other houses in the distance, but to create a feeling of depth, they're very, very muted, no detail. They're basically just little whites that I've left in the paper. And to that point, to the point of making the center of interest a little more obvious, I dull other areas. As I'm doing now, this distant villa is being muted or being softened. And another point I can bring up that may help the painter is, how do we use green? Inevitably, when we're painting landscapes, we need to use green. And the green from tube is often too intense, too bright, too unnatural. So I find I'm mixing almost all of these greens, and I'm making an effort to change them as I mix the color. For a new brush load of paint, I'll add a little more yellow or a little more blue. In this case, I've used, to make the base green, cadmium yellow and neutral tint. It makes a nice green, and I can vary that from a gray green to a more vibrant yellow green just by adding more yellow to that mixture. If I add a little Holbein lavender or a little bit of cobalt, I can get those soft sage greens that you see in the foreground or in the distance. And by adding burnt sienna or a little bit of red, I can get a really deep shadow color. So using green, I would say the one thing to remember is to make it vary as much as you can, because if it remains too much of a uniform green, it ends up being flat and feeling a bit unnatural. Well, we can see the finished painting, can't we? We can see it, and the question is when to set the brush down, and I find it's wise to set it down earlier rather than later. Of course, you don't want to overwork the painting, but if there are a couple things that I feel need to be done, I'll take off the tape, put it at a place where I can look at it, and think and play with some finishing touches in my mind's eye before I commit to paper. And that's what I've done in this case. I put the painting up on my mantle and I added a few strokes at the end, but nothing major. And all through this painting, through all the brush marks that you saw, I tried to keep the same tempo, whether from the big, broad brushwork or the tiny, small details at the end.